here's the brutal truth about portrait painting. You can have all of the features 99% in the right place, and that 1% difference can be enough to make your portrait feel nothing like your subject. I've already shared some of my most helpful tools to combat this on this channel, from basic cheat sheets to getting your proportions right, to using Photoshop to actually check your accuracy down to the millimeter. But there are a handful of small, unglamorous fixes that separate a clean, confident block-in from one that spirals into mud. Today, I'm going to cover those overlooked details that make a huge difference, the kind of tweaks that instantly upgrade how your Alla Prima portraits start. If you're like most oil painters, you probably do one of two things. Either you spend forever with a pencil getting every little detail perfect before you even touch paint, which kind of kills all of your spontaneity, or you dive straight in with paint, but your block-in is so vague and muddy that you're basically guessing where everything goes, leading to endless corrections and a painting that just gets tighter and more overworked as you go. Neither approach gives you what you're actually after: the freedom to paint with bold, confident, expressive brushwork on top of a clear, solid foundation. So why does this happen? Well, because most oil painters think of the block-in as either a necessary evil to push through or as a detailed drawing to perfect before the real painting begins. But here's the thing. Your block-in isn't separate from your painting. It is your painting. It's the foundation that either supports or sabotages everything that comes after. Think of it like building a house. You wouldn't throw up the walls before you've got a solid foundation, but you also wouldn't spend months making that foundation look decorative. The block-in to your portrait is the same way. Its job isn't to be detailed. Its job is to be clear, accurate, and something you can easily build on, so you can move into the middle and finishing stages without repainting your foundation over and over. And when you approach it the right way, you can nail your proportions, establish your major shapes, and set up your entire composition in just 20 minutes. Not to mention, if you have an accurate block-in that also has beautiful brushwork, your block-in can actually show through in the final, giving your piece an even looser, more effortless look with brushwork that you haven't overworked. Let me show you exactly how. First things first, when possible, set up your reference and your canvas side by side. And specifically, let's do it sight size. This means we are going to be working at the same scale, perfectly lined up side by side. So print your reference at the same dimensions as your canvas, line them up perfectly, and keep both surfaces totally parallel. This makes eyeballing proportions infinitely easier. You'll catch drawing errors almost immediately because the comparison is literal, not mental or theoretical. If you're prone to painting heads too large or skewed, this alone can correct it before your first layer of paint even dries. Next, a huge reason painters avoid blocking in wet into wet is that they fear making mud on the canvas. So the trick is to keep the early layers thin and lean, and if possible, fast drying. In this case, I use thin to mean that I'm keeping the quantity of paint small, and lean to refer to what I am or am not adding to the paint. So I'm referring more to like a chemical property. So if you use solvent, adding Gamsol to the block-in stage of your paint helps to check all of these boxes because your paint is going to go on thin. Gamsol doesn't let it pile up. And it's also lean because the addition of solvent. Plus, it means that it sets up pretty quickly because of how that solvent will evaporate. Now, if you prefer painting with fewer fumes, Galkid Light adds just enough flow to the early stages without fattening the paint too early. That being said, if you're fully solvent-free, you can scumble in your block-in with a dry brush. It'll look kind of matte and textured, sort of like oil pastel, but it is the safest and I think simplest way to really stay solvent-free. This checks the box of working thin, but I will say it's not exactly lean or fast drying. And one quick aside, liquid works great for these early stages, but as I covered in my video where I tried out every oil painting medium I could get my hands on, the smell and the fume exposure of liquid makes it a hard pass for me. And as for water mixable oils, most people who test them against traditional oils end up going back because there are a lot of great ways to work with regular oil paints just with no solvent. So I'm intentionally leaving that out here. Once you're site size and you have paint loaded onto your brush and ready to go, the next step is to allow your canvas edges to become part of your measuring system. So don't just draw the head, measure the space around the head. Those background shapes tell you if the head is too large, if the tilt is off, or if the placement feels awkward. Most "it looks off, but I can't see why" issues come from this step. It's not the facial proportions are fitting together wrong. It's that maybe you've left the right amount of space around the sides of the head, but not at the top and bottom, leading to a more stretched or skewed effect. So don't just measure the insides of the face, measure the outsides too. This is the beauty of working site size. It makes this super simple since your canvas and your reference are the exact same size. Now, this next step is where my previous videos are going to come full circle. So I block in directly with paint using simple landmarks. So I get down my eye line, the brow line, the base of the nose, the mouth, keeping all horizontals parallel and keeping those all perpendicular to the facial midline. As I covered in the video where I walk you through these landmarks step by step, that's what prevents one eye from just sitting higher or the mouth from tilting into a sneer. If you need a refresher, I'm going to link that video. But one thing I want to emphasize now is to keep your lines really thin, decisive, and legible. If your marks for these landmarks are thick, fuzzy, or they're kind of like hatched in, they'll be really hard to check later, and they'll push you toward overworking just to fix the clarity of them. Now, this next step is the simplest but most transformative habit, and that's to not wait until your painting looks done to check proportions. You're already too late by then, because by that point you've committed to a lot of paint, brushwork, and details. Instead, take a quick photo of your block-in at a really early stage and overlay it onto your reference digitally. Or, if you prefer, you can use tracing paper for a physical comparison. I tell my students in the first hour, check more than you paint, because once you know the foundation is right, the rest of the painting becomes freeing, not frustrating. This one especially is so transformative because it isn't about skill, it's about system. So set up a feedback loop so that your accuracy improves in real time and not just at the end when you have a realization about all the things that maybe you didn't quite get right. And finally, this is the mindset shift that changes everything. When you study masters of wet into wet oil painting, particularly artists like Sargent or Zorn, you can see traces of the block-in the final piece. So instead of thinking, "I'll clean this up later," as you put in your block-in, try asking yourself, what if my block-in had to be the finished painting? What if my model had to get up and leave in the next 10 minutes and this was the only shot that I got to make this image? How would I design my marks if I knew they had to stay? This isn't about adding pressure. It's about getting curious. This one question will push you to make cleaner, more deliberate decisions and then wean yourself off of the habit of fixing with just more paint. It's not the kind of thing you can ever just wave a magic wand and fix in one session. But if you show up with this attitude, each block-in becomes a rep toward mastery. You'll start to notice that your paintings look more complete with less effort and less overworking. And that's a sign that you're well on your way to a looser, more expressive style of art making. Now, putting everything together, here is the bottom line. Your block-in isn't busy work that you rush through to get to the real painting. It's the stage that allows you to paint with that beautiful, loose, Sargent-like quality in the first place. When you take 20 minutes to establish clear proportional landmarks, simple planar divisions, and clean shadow shapes, you buy yourself hours of confident, expressive painting. You're not being careful because you're scared. You're being bold because you're certain. And that confidence is what people see through in your finished work. That's what makes a portrait feel alive instead of labored over. But here's the thing. These techniques we're covering don't exist in isolation. The proportional landmarks, the ultra-precise drawing check, and everything we're going to cover in the coming weeks, they're all part of a complete system for creating portraits that have that expressive, masterful quality that you see in painters like Sargent. And if you want to see exactly how these pieces all come together, how to take these exercises and practice methods and turn them into actual finished portraits that look loose, confident, and alive, I put together a free training that walks you through the complete roadmap. I'll show you the exact practice routine I use with my students, the common pitfalls that keep painters stuck in tight, overworked rendering, and how to develop that bold, painterly approach that makes people stop and stare at your work. The link is in the description, or you can scan the QR code on screen to save your spot. The workshop is completely free, but I know it'll really help you apply everything I've talked about in this video, so don't wait to save your seat. Remember, you don't need to choose between accuracy and expression. You can have both. It starts with a solid block-in that gives you the confidence to paint with freedom. Go check out that training, try this method on your next portrait, and let me know in the comments how it changes your process, or just what your biggest block-in questions are. You've got this. Now, go paint something beautiful.